In my last video, I talked about how the arts are my political weapon and how I'm specifically doing that by running a venture firm for the arts in film, fashion, and art. And while it supports founders and creative entrepreneurs in those three spaces, specifically for emerging talent that historically has not gained access into these rooms through proper connections or financial means, it's aimed to alleviate that barrier. But it's also aimed to make sure that we preserve history and culture for everyone that comes after us and archive our wins and our mistakes. And then given the fact that this is honestly the first of its kind and we're supporting the arts through a more for-profit lens, it's only natural that people always ask me, A, how are you planning to do this? But B, what is the mission? What are your values? And how does that play out in the long run? And to answer the first question, that typically involves when you're operating in film, fashion, and art, these are three separate verticals, but they all beautifully intertwine with each other and there's a nice intersection between the three. But their deals are also involves a little bit of nuance and sometimes an atypical approach. Given the fact that it's a new asset class, creativity is an asset class, yes. We are seeking to raise $50 million for the first fund. Ambitious, but I've never been one to back down from a challenge. To answer the second question in the matter of what our fund's mission and our values are, I think it's very important given the fact that we know I really value preserving arts and culture and protecting and safeguarding history, but not to mention I also love expanded storytelling, which is why I feel so compelled to start this fund, and the fact that I currently don't think any of the creative industry as a whole is doing a good job conveying everybody's stories, whether it's from various race and ethnicities, different economic classes. I think there's an opportunity to not just redo the same project over and over again or regurgitate the same trends, but rather introduce new talent into the fold, introduce new stories to be consumed, and introduce things that honestly make us stop and think a lot more as opposed to just passively consuming. And to be quite frank, I really value integrity in myself, and that is by extension built into the fund and its values. So when I think about the type of community I'm serving as creative entrepreneurs who have had difficulty accessing these rooms and being in these spaces that get a lot of limelight from the public, it is just as important to make sure that there are investors on the cap table that also share our values and share my values and believe in the ethos and believe that we can really achieve this. So what that means is essentially for me, I only am interested in investors who typically operate in those spaces, although I will happily chat with the more traditional side. But as I've alluded in my last video, and I will repeat here again, this is a form of political activism. You can never separate art and politics from each other. They will always be married until the end of time. I think artists and creators have always held the rest of us as a society accountable of the things that really deserve attention and the things that we have been inherently messing up or not doing a great job of maintaining or executing. Because for me personally, I do not want creatives or creative entrepreneurs to fall victim to the same systems that have historically exploited them throughout time. And frankly, having it through a more venture for-profit lens also is me saying to the rest of the world that they deserve to be paid what they're worth. They are not an afterthought. They are not cheap labor. Their work is extremely valuable to not just companies, not just corporations, but humanity as a whole, and it should be treated as such. And since I've said that I essentially value integrity, diversified talent, and equitable pay for this space and for this fund by extension, I want to make it explicitly clear that I have no interest in communicating or even chatting with any investor or any individual that is considering investing in this fund. If they've supported the current federal regime in any way, shape, or form, or has made statements or is an apologist to it, you are not welcome here. You are actually the antithesis of everything this fund, myself, and everyone under the fund stands for. We value integrity, we value diversity, we value cultural preservation, and most importantly, we value the cultural critique that creatives and creative entrepreneurs bring to the table, bring to our attention to make us better, to have us evolve, and to make us stronger in the end. I know that me making that statement may seem inflammatory, but I don't think that we live in a time where I can just let something like that slide. I don't also have any fear from people who don't share values for me, because we also know in that space, once you are on that cap table, you're on it for a very long time. I also know that there are people who solely make investments strictly based on return, but that's just not how I roll, and I don't think that's being in great service to the people who benefit from the fund. And I will finish off this video by stating one of my favorite quotes that really just sums it up, how I feel, how I approach this fund. In the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it.